to a new term, YIMBY. It's an episode about neighbors, zoning, and the common good. After the news, this is Nashville.
Sharing news and stories from the voices of Middle Tennessee. That's This is Nashville. Our show is made possible by Music City Prep Clinic. This is Nashville is in service to you. So if you have an idea for the show or feedback you'd like us to hear, leave us a voice message at 615-751-2500.
We were in our private living quarters.
The Democratic governor says today is an example of real accountability for acts of political violence. Democrats joined Republicans in issuing similar calls against political violence in the aftermath of far-right influencer Charlie Kirk's assassination in Utah last month. Thousands of federal workers have received layoff notices since the government shutdown began 2 weeks ago. This week, a federal judge in California will hear arguments challenging the administration's mass layoffs. Here's NPR's Andrea Hsu.
The lawsuit originated with a memo issued by the White House Office of Management and Budget a week before the shutdown. It suggested that the Trump administration might permanently lay off some federal workers instead of temporarily furloughing them if funding for the government lapsed. Unions representing more than 800,000 federal employees sued the Budget Office and its director, Russell Vought, to block any shutdown-related layoffs. The unions argue that the Trump administration has no authority in a shutdown to get rid of government functions mandated by Congress. They also argue that the White House is violating federal law by requiring federal employees to perform work related to a reduction in force during the lapse in funding. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
Israeli authorities have identified the bodies of 4 deceased hostages whom Hamas handed over from Gaza. More from NPR's Daniel Lestrin.
An Israeli autopsy has identified the remains of the 4 bodies handed over Monday. The Israeli military says it believes one 26-year-old Israeli hostage was injured in the October 7th attack 2 years ago and died of his wounds, accusing Hamas of not giving him proper medical care. It says it believes another hostage was killed in captivity during the first months of the war. The identities of the other hostage bodies returned have not yet been confirmed by Israel. Families of Israeli hostages have expressed surprise and anger that Hamas did not hand over more bodies. Some bodies are missing or under rubble, and there will be an international effort to recover their remains. It's unclear how many bodies Hamas has currently in its possession.
That's Daniel Lestrin. It's NPR News. The army in Madagascar has seized power days after the president fled the island nation, citing threats on his life. Kate Bartlett reports the move comes after several weeks of massive anti-government demonstrations.
A colonel in an elite army unit has announced the military has taken over the country. His statement came minutes after members of parliament voted to impeach President Andry Rajoelina. Madagascar's youth took to the streets last month, demanding Rajoelina resign amid anger over water and electricity shortages crippling the country. Over the weekend, the CAPSAT military unit announced they had sided with the protesters. Rajoelina then fled and is in hiding in an undisclosed location. The former French colony in the Indian Ocean off the coast of East Africa is no stranger to rebellions. Rajoelina himself first came to power as leader of a transitional government following a coup in 2009. He later ran for election and won. For NPR News, I'm Kate Bartlett in Johannesburg.
Brilliant autumn shades of yellow, orange, red, and brown are surfacing across the northeastern U.S., but leaves may be falling to the ground earlier this leaf peeping season. The U.S. Drought Monitor's map shows a vast majority of the country experienced abnormally dry to extreme drought earlier this month, but Andy Fenton, senior conservation ecologist with the Nature Conservancy in Massachusetts, tells the Associated Press autumn in New England is still worth experiencing this year. I'm Lakshmi Singh, NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And The Greenhouse, a plant-filled oasis in Green Hills, working to make the holiday season less stressful by offering catering and venue rental for family and business holiday parties. Details at greenhousenash.com.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We are talking this hour about our tendency toward being a NIMBY. You know the word? Not in my backyard. When it comes to packing people into our neighborhoods, a lot of us come down on that side. And what it might take for us to become a yes in my backyard person, YIMBY. That's what we're talking about today. A debate in a neighborhood by Percy Priest Lake over just how many homes a developer would squeeze into a new project shows what kind of friction occurs when we start talking about living closer together, even in the name of affordable housing. And that's where we're going to start. Cynthia Abrams is WPLN's Metro reporter. Stephen Elliott is a reporter for the Nashville Banner. They teamed up this year on a project because they saw just how much this one neighborhood conflict we're going to talk about mirrored the broader debate about density and affordable housing. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So a reminder also, we are streaming video from the studio today. That's at youtube.com/@WPLN. So join us visually if you like. So it sounds like this all started with a community meeting that got a little bit out of hand. Let's start with a clip.
They want to be.
You just want to maximize how much value you could get for the land. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all we see.
They want to build. No matter what we saying here.
No, we're not doing that.
If that sounds like a chaotic Zoom call, well, that's it kind of was, right, Stephen? What is it we were listening to there, and what were these neighbors trying to fend off in their neighborhood?
Yeah, this was a community meeting called by the district council member, Russ Bradford. He wanted to introduce a development proposal before it even got filed with Metro. So this was an informal meeting where the developer came and said, here's my idea for this property in your neighborhood. And a bunch of the people who live right around the corner from there showed up to express their opinions about it.
All right, and where is this neighborhood, just for folks who know the area and want to get situated?
The property is right at the intersection of Bell Road and Smith Springs Road. So this is in South Nashville, right by Percy Priest Lake.
Yeah. So, Cindy, is this the kind of density they were talking about? Remind us what it is they were proposing. It sounded like there were kind of two options, one with, bigger, fewer homes, and one with smaller, less expensive homes?
Yeah, so the plot of land was originally zoned for around 25 to 30 single-family homes. The developer said if he built those, they would be priced at around $600,000. But he was proposing to build twice as many at about half the cost.
So why was that a problem for some of those neighbors?
So the neighbors that spoke in the meeting and the neighbors that Stephen and I spoke to later were really concerned about that higher density proposal. Their neighborhood is this small one way in, one way out neighborhood off of Bell Road. And they were really concerned about sharing their entrance to their neighborhood, which the development would do. They were concerned about having that amount of people, that amount of families living kind of in that small area that they live in. I think the main concern was kind of congestion, traffic, and of course, construction, the process of adding that development.
Well, listen, we don't mind a little dust, a little noise, all in the name of progress. Oh, Stephen, talk to me about, I think when people talk about affordable housing or even the word density, they might not necessarily think of it in this sort of terms, like, oh, it might just be a neighborhood that would have been single-family homes that instead is going to be twice as many townhomes. Is this the kind of density that the city is starting to encourage elsewhere?
In a way, yes. This is what the legislation that's moving through council is sort of related to. This would have been a bigger project than I think a lot of what the city is working on now,
Really?
which is more about like 4 units or 6 units on a lot. This would have been 60, 65, 64 on a larger lot. So it is a little bit different, but yes, I think in a way it is related.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking about the policies and zoning that promote affordable housing in Nashville with WPLN reporter Cynthia Abrams and reporter Stephen Elliott of the Nashville Banner. So, Stephen, what has changed in recent years already that has allowed for more density? Because I'm thinking listeners might be thinking, oh, yeah, I've noticed that there have been sort of tighter developments here or there around where I am. Is there anything that has changed that is encouraging this, or is this just the way development is going?
I think most of what would have encouraged this in the past few years would be SP zoning, specific plan, which maybe one of your later guests will get into more, but it's basically this sort of ad hoc zoning option that's available in the city where a developer can come and say, I want to change the zoning of this property to get more units on it or to get commercial uses on it that wouldn't otherwise be allowed. And in exchange, I'll give you X, Y, Z. Maybe it's a small park. Maybe it's a bus stop. Maybe it's some kind of affordable bonus for the community as a community benefit. So that's a lot of what's been going on.
Oh, wait, can you stop there for just a second on this SP zoning thing? It sounds like it's just kind of a negotiation, sort of knowing the city has interests. They want affordability. They have been encouraging density. Make us an offer, and we'll let you do more density?
Yeah, kind of. In other communities, they have options where they can require a developer to pay some amount to kind of offset the impact of a development. And we don't have that option here in Nashville because of state law. And so this is kind of another way that the city has worked out to achieve some of those goals.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to this neighborhood by Priest Lake. The local council member, Russ Bradford, who called that chaotic Zoom meeting that we were listening in on, told you all something interesting. He's kind of stuck between listening to his constituents and this desire to address the housing shortage in Nashville. Here's the clip.
When I first ran in 2019, I was more of the mindset of, if the community does not want it, I won't move it forward. And so this time around, I'm still wanting to get that community input, but I'm also now looking at it from the lens of, we can't keep doing it this way. We've got to find a way to work between the two parties to get the housing built that we need.
Well, it sounds like Councilman Bradford there feels like he's supposed to be this yes in my backyard person, but he represents people who lean more like the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard. Cindy, how is that working out for him?
Yeah, I think something that was interesting that Stephen and I heard was that he's kind of transitioned over the course of his term. I think initially he was someone that really was ready to reject projects if the community was not behind them. And now he's kind of more grown into this camp that's seeing the lack of affordable housing as a real problem for Nashville and seemingly a little bit more ready to kind of buck the desires of his constituents. I connected with him yesterday, and it sounds like in this project there has been no movement.
Oh, really? So since this meeting occurred and there was all this opposition, nothing's moved forward?
He said no updates.
Wow. Well, talk to me about getting stuck in this place because, even polling data seems to suggest that people want more affordable housing in Nashville. And so obviously council members know this is a priority, affordable housing. The people have said it. And then you sort of bring it to a neighborhood and they say, get that out of here. What are they supposed to do?
Well, that's really kind of at the heart of the question, isn't it? I think people maybe theoretically are really oftentimes in favor of this. But then when it comes to your neighborhood or your street, it can be difficult to get on board. If the construction's happening next door to you, I think we often see people kind of turn against it. But we are seeing the council kind of move towards upzoning.
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 What would that mean?
That would mean kind of allowing for higher density. Changing the zoning to allow for higher density.
So downzoning would be allowing less sort of people. Upzoning would be more density.
Exactly.
Got it. Well, so the developer in this case, Patrizio Murdaca, seems to say that he's open to compromise, but that the neighbors are not working with him in good faith. Let's just hear from him.
The most vocal, angry community members often rob themselves of the opportunity for true compromise and a true conversation because of how impossible those conversations end up becoming because of the level of like vocal violence that happens.
Vocal violence. Stephen Elliott, I wonder if in zooming in on this one project in the Priest Lake area, if you all found that you know, essentially the opponents are going to be the ones who are talking louder than anybody else.
Yeah, I think that, if you see a proposal and you think, that seems fine, you're probably not going to carve out 2 hours on a weeknight to go to a fairly boring Zoom meeting. I just think it's in our nature to show up for things that we're especially passionate about.
Yeah. Well, so step back from this one development in the Priest Lake area off Smith Springs Road and Bell Road. This is the kind of thing that I think folks are suggesting Nashville needs if we're going to have more affordable housing. What is it that's actually standing in the way? Like, what complaint from the neighbors is the thing that's holding this up? Is it more than just what's being spoken, like traffic, like construction noise? Are they really saying, we don't know if this is good for our neighborhood?
Yeah, there are frequently at meetings like this, and we've been to them all over the county. And they a lot of times look a lot like this one we've been talking about, maybe a little less tense. But there are sometimes these coded references to what they think affordable housing means.
Yeah.
And we heard a little bit of that in the meeting that this is about, and you can go watch it on YouTube if you really want to spend a couple of
great. We'll put the link out there.
Yeah, but it's crime is going to come if there's affordable housing. That's kind of the sort of link that is made.
Well, that's sort of what I wonder, Cindy, is if when people hear affordable housing, they think somehow it's that it's something undesirable.
I think that's accurate. I think something that a lot of our later guests in this episode have said to me is that affordable housing is often kind of seen as like a dirty word. And it's something that turns people off from wanting that in their neighborhood. But again, that's kind of at odds with the acknowledgement that affordable housing is something we are lacking in this city.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, you all have this, is it called the Zip Code Project?
That's right.
Is this where you get to attend all of these meetings just to understand at the zip code level what's going on? What is going on around the county? What are you seeing?
Yeah, you see a lot of conversations like this, and they're in different parts of the county too. The neighborhood closest to this project is called Bayview, and it is at least zooming out and looking at the county as a whole, is a fairly affordable neighborhood. But you'll see this in neighborhoods with higher housing costs too, and you'll see it in neighborhoods that are further or less far along in terms of their development arc. And it's a lot of the same buzzwords you hear. It's a lot of the same concerns in terms of traffic and congestion and infrastructure capability. It does feel like a kind of an echo sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Do you get the sense that when people have said, we need more affordable housing, somehow they're sort of thinking about, we need big apartment buildings in this other part of town that I don't go to much, or something like that? Like, what are you sensing?
Yeah, I mean, you will hear that sort of simplified version of it sometimes. You'll also hear that it needs to be on the corridors, so our busiest corridors, because that's where the most frequent bus lines are. That's where there's already a lot of activity, so it wouldn't, I guess, disturb the sort of tranquility of a neighborhood. You'll also hear, maybe later today, some people push back on that and say we shouldn't force low-income and working-class people to live in more polluted, noisier areas. We should allow them the opportunity to live in these places that we're trying to protect.
Yeah. Cindy, when you've been referring to me and others in our newsroom about this reporting, you have used this is the NIMBY YIMBY stuff. The not in my backyard, yes in my backyard. And honestly, how many yes in my backyard people have you all met? Are there many?
There definitely is a contingent in Nashville. You know, we have someone later in this show who I think represents that camp. But there definitely is kind of a robust group out there really advocating for these changes. I don't know if you actually measured it up against the rest of the city, how dominant that percentage is, but there is a vocal group that is advocating for these types of changes.
Yeah. Stephen, in your zip code project, are you seeing much of that out there saying, hey, I know this may not be on its face something we would welcome, but let's think about the greater needs of our Nashville community and come to a yes?
I think there are people, and it can be harder to find them because, you go to these meetings and you can find a dozen people to talk to with pretty similar views. And there might be a dozen more who are at home not participating in this conversation who, if they knew about the debate, you don't know what they would say. Maybe they'd say, yeah, that sounds fine. That sounds great. That looks like the kind of house that I would have been able to afford at that age or something like that. So I guess it's up to the council members and those YIMBYs perhaps to seek those voices out because, I think that group is becoming more organized perhaps. They're showing up to a lot of the meetings at the Planning Commission and at Metro Council to make sure there is a voice in favor of a project because there's often a long line of people waiting to speak against a project. So you've seen them show up more and more.
Well, Stephen Elliott of the Nashville Banner and Cindy Abrams of WPLN's Metro Reporter, thank you all both for bringing us this reporting and that allowing us to expand on it today in our show. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll meet one of these YIMBYs. We'll also bring on a NIMBY, although we'll let him explain himself. We're talking about how Nashville becomes a more affordable place to live. It's one of the biggest challenges of our time. And guess what? There is no easy answer. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners.
And Diversified Trust, an independent wealth management firm offering an integrated approach to the investment, trust, estate, and philanthropic needs of individuals, families, and institutions. DiversifiedTrust.com.
And Tennessee Performing Arts Center presenting the Improvised Shakespeare Company October 18th and 19th. Based on suggestions from the audience, actors create an improvised comedic work using the language and style of Shakespeare. Details at tpac.org. And Goodwill of Middle Tennessee, offering job training and career navigation services at no cost to participants. More at giveit2goodwill.org.
When a girl who was adopted wanted to know where she came from, her mother had to travel all the way from New York to China.
I think we can all agree that 7,000 miles is a long way to go for a little piece of paper.
I'm Carolyn Beeler. One family's effort to trace an international adoption, plus the latest from the Middle East, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 2 on 90.3 WPLN News.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. When Vanderbilt polled Nashvillians earlier this year about top priorities for city investment, you almost could not imagine there being more agreement. Build more affordable housing. Nearly 90% people who identified as both Democrats and Republicans saying this is a top priority. But when the questions got more pointed, the majorities got a bit thinner. According to this same poll, 56% of residents support allowing multifamily housing, quote, everywhere in my city to revitalize neighborhoods and local economies. Still a majority, but you had nearly as many saying they only want multifamily housing in dense areas. There's more to density and affordable housing than just multifamily housing, but it is the central issue that tends to divide us as a community, which we're talking about in this episode. To continue our conversation about affordable housing, we have Ben Vaught, who is, you might say, broadly in favor of what you might call zoning reform. I think he's a recovering engineer for the city. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
We might call him a yes in my backyard vote, though to be fair, I don't know that you live in the dense neighborhood of Germantown, correct? I don't know if there are many backyards, but
I do. I don't technically have a backyard.
All right, so maybe not in my backyard, but in my hood. And Chris Rimke is part of the Save Our Nashville Neighborhoods, also a developer consultant. You also find him regularly pointing out that the most affordable housing we have is the houses that are being torn down for more dense developments. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you.
All right, so Ben, what does this word zoning reform mean to you?
For me, it's really about removing barriers. I mean, zoning really only has the power to say no. It can't mandate affordable housing, really. It can require it if something else happens, but like zoning really only has the power to say no. And we have mandated the most expensive form of housing available, a single-family home, in the majority of the city, and we've relegated multifamily housing to, as y'all said on an earlier segment, directly on state highways or abutting interstates. Like, we use multifamily housing as a buffer. We treat it as a nuisance to be mitigated in our zoning code. And so I think zoning reform for me is about ending that ban.
Well, I would say a lot of people honestly, you start talking about zoning and they're like, I'm not sure how much this even matters. I'm guessing you have conversations with people to sort of like open their eyes to like, no, zoning is exactly why our city is the way it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a civil engineer. I'm, as you said, a recovering civil engineer. I'm extremely
I don't know the full story to that, but I'm sure there's an interesting one for another day.
I worked as a civil engineer for about a decade. And I work in the hospitality industry downtown now. I made quite a shift. I am extremely used to reading very dense, very boring. I can find interest in very boring things. But like, for instance, the city council or the Metro Council is considering a bill to add zoning districts number 115 through 119, since we apparently don't have enough. And I read the justification for it, and my eyes glazed over. It is so boring.
Oh, you're saying that even for you, as someone who can get into this stuff?
Yes, and I know people in the planning department personally. I know they have good intentions, and I know they're operating within the existing political environment that they can't control. I think one could be forgiven for assuming that is the point. The point is for it to be complex, and the point is for it to be impossible to navigate. And the point is to say no without saying no.
That you don't have to say no. You can just have
because everybody supports, as you said, everybody supports affordable housing somewhere else. The zoning code. And the poll you referenced, the 56% of people that support multifamily housing, it's extremely stratified based on income.
Yeah.
The only income bracket that the majority of whom said no was people who earn over $100,000. And, people earning under $15,000, I think it was 80-something% supported legalizing multifamily housing. What we're discussing here is fundamentally just, I would describe it as like the luxury concerns of, and good for them, the landed gentry. And we spend a lot of time on that, and I don't think we have the time for that.
Yeah, well, you're getting a well said on in the YouTube chat. Andy Wildman says, well said, mandating expensive housing on so much land and treating apartments as a nuisance to be mitigated. So, Chris, let me turn to you for a second. I mean, I think people would be surprised to hear that, you have worked for developers. You're in the development business, and yet you kind of are seen as the one who's saying, "Whoa, Nelly, let's slow down on so many projects." What do you see that as an about face, or has just something changed?
No, I'm just interested in community health and how we maintain safety, how we maintain a city. Nashville experienced phenomenal growth in the last 2 decades, so much so that the community is shell-shocked about it, and what they see is their ditches overflowing, and they see in the nations they're talking about brownouts. I mean, you see these problems from infrastructure, and what causes that? Well, it's because we're in excess of our infrastructure needs, and so we quickly move into let's cure it with density, or maybe a much more simple way is the perception of the public is that the bathtub's overflowing and the fix is going to be put on a bigger faucet. And so ultimately...
Wait, what would be the analogy there? What's the bigger faucet? The a zoning solution?
Yeah, the zoning solution. And so, this is a problem that your regular folks are trying to reconcile. Ben is absolutely right. It's a very dense thing.
Yeah.
And if we're trying to solve a process problem, we should attack a process problem. If we're trying to solve an affordability problem, we ought to focus on those that the Unified Housing Strategy says need help.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much below 50% AMI, average median income. Certainly below 80 is a very important place. Most of the density projects we're talking about serve above 100. So my problem is that we're talking about how to serve people in need, people that need bread and roof over their heads, but do it by going to the grocery store and filling up the wine and cheese section, because this results in luxury housing and high taxes and high property values, speculation. So now corporate ownership comes in and buys in what has traditionally been individually owned wealth building families. And I'm a believer we can actually have our cake and eat it too. I just don't believe we can do it by focusing on trying to get low-cost housing on the most expensive dirt in town.
Let's kind of dig in there to that dirt for a second. And if you, I forgot to mention that we're streaming on YouTube today. If you want to join us by video, it's youtube.com/@WPLN. Welcome to those who are watching. Feel free to drop something into the chat if you've got a comment. So, Chris, maybe help me out with an example of, trying to put affordable housing on the most expensive dirt in town. What's an example that sticks out to you?
Well, we're trying to create a $300,000 house or less, just to frame up an example.
Right, and this is so it can be somewhere in the range of affordable for somebody who is in that kind of average income.
Yes.
Okay.
And the focus point becomes how to get significant density. In a classroom, you can learn that it is cheaper to build a building to scale. The bigger, basically it's just a scale phenomenon that is true. The problem is when you deliver it, the end real estate values is against what the market will bring, not against what the cost was.
So in other words, even though it would be more cost efficient to build more units at once in one building, in Nashville's housing market, you do that and you then charge what you can get, and it might be still unaffordable.
If you want to look at the Nations and Wedgwood, Houston, you'll find living examples of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, you build a fifth of an acre in the Nations costs $500,000 today, just the property.
The property, 1/5 of an acre. So maybe there was a home on a lot that wasn't a huge lot anyway. It's sold, and then what?
Well, when that happens, the developer's going to build expensive housing on it because he just paid a whole lot of money for the land. And he also is displacing someone who's likely on a piece of land that is a low density solution for in what a lot of cases in these cases are blue collar, essential workforce folks who wind up getting displaced. And even our own studies show us that we should cure the displacement problem before we keep compounding it with adding density. And so one fuels another. And so the result isn't there. And so what you wind up with on a $500,000 piece of property at 20 acres is a townhome that cost $1.1 million, and that's not affordable.
Yeah.
And
well, no, I was going to say, Ben, if I can get you in here, I mean, I'm certain you could find all of these things to be true. That you tear down something, it was intended to put on more units. You hope that it's affordable, and it. You're charging $1 million for a townhome. I mean, it doesn't sound out of the realm of possibilities. But are there more successful ventures that you would point to say, no, density overall can be the big answer to affordability?
I think developers are building $1.1 million townhomes because that's what our zoning says we want.
Really?
That's what our zoning says we want. We want detached single-family homes. And that's changed in the Nations. It hasn't had time to actually do anything yet because it just changed. But I think the available evidence, as far as I'm aware, all of the available evidence shows the opposite of what Mr. Remke is saying. Increased density does not increase displacement. Developers are responding to gentrification. They don't cause it necessarily. Like there are, the charming cottages that people love to talk about, and they are charming, they're cute. there are 2-bed houses in 12 South bringing $1 million.
Yeah.
Like, banning development doesn't guarantee affordability. Banning development hypercharges gentrification. All of the available evidence shows that increasing density increases affordability.
Yeah. Well, and yet there are these instances where you were like, well, but they tore down this house that wasn't very valuable and put up 4 things that are very expensive. How do you level those two things?
I think we should be doing that in rich neighborhoods instead of working class neighborhoods. Like, the nation's gentrified because everything between the nations and downtown refused to grow.
Yeah. A comment from Craig Bardo on the YouTube stream. Density, zoning, building codes, even NIMBYism are all distractions. The problem is the market, that affordable housing is ultimately market rate. You're nodding your head, Chris. What do you think here? Like, what's really the issue that can be solved?
Developers use zoning to figure out how they can make the most money.
Yeah.
That's what developers do with zoning, and that is true. So the way you can make your most money in the context of these dense developments is typically to max out the property for the highest use you're able to put there and develop the most revenue. Then it delivers what the market will pay. If we wanted to solve the affordability issue, we do buildings to scale on property that basically are not for profits.
Yeah. You're saying, but that would change the business of development, which is probably not happening anytime soon.
Well, developers would work for government to build housing or not-for-profits
right.
or other groups.
It happens already. Yep.
The market's not going to solve this. And if you look at other cities, you were asking about other cities, there's a lot of displacement policies and various things in other cities who have the experience. We didn't take time to do any of that. We haven't figured out how we may make an adjustment for a displaced person to require that they come back to a place or have an alternative. We simply displace them. If we want to talk about what displaces people in these kind of projects, I mean, Ben's alluding to the fact that you go into these richer neighborhoods. I think what he's saying is the low-density neighborhoods. Nashville's most significant ownership of majority neighborhoods is all people of color. The blacks and the Hispanics own more majority single-family neighborhoods than do the whites.
I'm not totally sure I'm tracking with what you're saying there, and maybe because it's delicate.
If you look, I mean, most people avoid talking about this and just assume that you're going to the elite neighborhoods to work on them. And the reality is, if you look at where the huge displacement's occurring, where are we gentrifying, it's actually in the neighborhoods that are modest, that are people of color. Our own stats show that. And that is where developers are go in and buy the types of homes we are and start putting things in. So those neighborhoods, I don't know that they're so anti-development, but what they're anti is you're displacing our communities. We don't necessarily want our members of our communities going to other neighborhoods. We've lived here forever. Yeah. I mean, and so I think the cultural element in here has been lost in sort of this whole neoliberal deregulation thing that the YIMBYs have embraced.
Yeah. Well, Ben, talk about deregulation because, I think there are big cities that people point to examples that where when you really get loose with zoning, people maybe have buyer's remorse years later because it wasn't as maybe controlled. What is the kind of YIMBY argument for zoning that I'm just guessing that it's not build anything anywhere and let the market decide?
One thing I want to clear up, I'm not talking about minority neighborhoods. I'm talking about rich neighborhoods like Edgefield that are extremely majority white. Like Edgefield should not be zoned the way it is. There's no reason we couldn't be building 6-story single-stair apartments.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about Edgefield as in an East Nashville historic neighborhood that has an overlay that prevents almost any kind of new construction.
And that's the point. Developers are building to Mr. Rimke's point, developers are building where we allow them to build. This is the outcome our zoning code said we want. This is what we said we wanted to happen, and it's at the behest of homeowners.
Yeah.
Wealthy homeowners with power.
Yeah. Well,
political power.
Chris, is some of that because it's like that's who shows up, who is going to go to the meeting because they're perhaps the largest investment in their lifetime is on the line.
The market drives where people go. And why the developers are there is where they make the most money, and the opportunities given.
Yeah.
And so, that is, here we are trying to talk about affordable housing. The justification was affordable. We're sitting here debating whether we take up white neighborhoods. I don't know how we got into that, from trying to find affordability, because it doesn't get delivered when you go to the most expensive places in town and start carving them up to do these things. It hasn't happened.
You're saying if you build in a place that is already has a high value, then it is going to be an expensive place to live.
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to be that. Let's look at the nations. The proof is even in our own results. We started this in 2010. Horizontal property regimes were brought on. We started doing tall skinnies. 53% of that community has been developed. If that kind of density was going to solve affordability, it would be one of the cheapest places in town right now.
Well, it's not. Ben, is there a point here? Is it? I mean, I don't want to throw up my hands and be a fatalist and say I don't know what you do here, but is there an easy answer that even if it's not politically popular, if you could push a button, could solve some of this?
I mean, it's not an easy answer that solves it. It's not a silver bullet, but there are easy answers that help. And to Mr. Rimke's point about infrastructure, I think he's presenting a false choice. The choice isn't between infill and nothing. The choice is between infill and sprawl. And we know that single-family sprawl, single-family neighborhoods are the most expensive type of housing to serve. They don't pay, neighborhoods like Mr. Rimke's don't even pay enough in property taxes to cover their own maintenance. We have to have infill. We have to have infill to pay for the affordable housing that Mr. Rimke says he wants. I don't know how he wants to pay for it unless he's proposing a massive property tax increase. I don't think we should do that. I think we should allow people to live where they want. And again, to his point that building in rich neighborhoods doesn't solve anything, I disagree. I disagree. The data disagrees. If you build, I'm speaking in rough terms here and I'm kind of being conservative, but if you build 2 market rate homes, you free up 1 home that's affordable below the median. You build 5 market rate homes, you free up 1 house in the bottom 20% of the market. Because people move into those new homes and they move out of homes and then somebody moves into that home, you create these migration chains. And that happens almost immediately. It happens about as fast as we could build affordable housing. I think we should do both.
You're saying where one unit would be, you'd force the price to be held low so it would be affordable for someone. Is that what you're saying?
Our zoning code currently forces the prices to be held high. Right. And I mean, Metro Historic Zoning Commission says that on their website. One of the points of historic overlays is to make housing more expensive. They don't word it that way, but that's what they say. They talk about increasing property values. Like the point of our zoning code is to create basically a housing cartel and where homeowners get to say no. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's in keeping with our values as a city. It's basically climate arson. And to say that building in rich neighborhoods does nothing, I mean, again, the available data shows the exact opposite. It's functionally the same as climate change denial.
Well, we won't solve it all right here today. But Chris, you want to leave us with a last word before we close?
Well, I think, as I've gotten into this project, what we're really interested in
is Save Nashville.
Yes, what we're interested in is how do we bridge the neighborhood and community voices with this issue? Because we've got people incredibly polarized. And when people that are interested in saving the Highland Rim Forest within the neighborhoods of Nashville hear things like we've got to get really dense to keep sprawl from happening, and you watch all of the big mature trees get cut down, that is not something they think is accomplishing that task, and I'm with them.
Yeah. Well, it's a thorny issue. You've heard it right here today, and we're going to stick with it for the rest of the hour, but we do need to take one more break. Thank you so much, Ben and Chris, for joining us today. When we return, we're joined by someone at the center of it all, the Executive Director of Metro Planning, Lucy Kempf, and we'll get an academic perspective on our tendency toward NIMBYism. So stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, working to help donors make more possible through the power of community giving. More at cfmt.org. And Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's daily show, This Is Nashville, engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com. And Wildwood Resort and Marina on Cordell Hall Lake, offering corporate and nonprofit retreats, getaways, and celebrations, 1 hour east of Nashville year-round. More at visitwildwood.com.
Hey, I'm Ryan Van Velzer, managing editor of a new collaboration of 7 public media stations spread across Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia. We're calling it the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom. And like squares on a quilt, we're stitching together stories about our communities, the challenges we face, and the ways we come together to solve them. From the hills of North America's oldest mountain range to the banks of the Mississippi River, we'll bring you the voices of the people who call this place home.
Learn more about the Appalachian Mid-South Newsroom at WPLN.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. If you want your eyes to roll back in your head, just go spend a few hours in a zoning meeting. Yikes, so technical. Even the folks who are very interested in the topic have admitted as much today on the show. And yet, it's what shapes this place we call home. Whether you're in Nashville proper, you're in a neighboring community. If you live in a neighborhood or cul-de-sac instead of through streets, well, that's because zoning allowed it, probably. If you live in a tall skinny, that's because zoning allowed it. If you live in a high-rise, that's because zoning allowed it. You get it. The person who guides these zoning policies in Nashville is Lucy Kempf, Executive Director of the Metro Planning Department, on the line with us from her office. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Blake, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I think zoning can be interesting and legible. But I agree. It's a little wacky. I don't know. After this hour, I'm wondering if it's a tough subject. But thanks for having me.
Well, Lucy, thanks for... And we're also joined in the studio by Professor Ken Chilton of Tennessee State University from the Department of Public Administration. His research has him writing papers with titles like The Impact of Single-Family Rental REITs on Regional Housing Markets. So he'll put us some zoning context in for our region. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Lucy, can zoning really resolve our issues with affordable housing like I've been talking about today? Have you seen it work?
So, Blake, I think one of the things after listening to the previous discussion, one thing we've learned is that there are a few different strategies needed to promote a strong housing policy. So zoning and land use, which is what we're talking about today, is just part of one part of a much broader framework. For example, the city has invested since 2011 over $200 million in the Barnes Fund. That gives grants to nonprofit developers to deliver affordable housing. Our last budget included anti-displacement funding to help address the needs that we have. So I don't want folks listening to think that zoning is the only answer, but it is an important answer because it absolutely shapes the market. But I think we need holistic solutions to address our needs.
That's helpful. Ken, what do you see? Is zoning creating affordability in Nashville as you see it?
No. To Lucy's point, it's more complex than that. Zoning was historically Euclid v. Ambler in 1914, 1915. It's about a separation of uses, residential, commercial, industrial. It's changed over time. It does have impacts on the density, but are we talking, is the goal affordable housing or is the goal number of units? If it's number of units, density helps a lot. If it's affordability, there's no evidence that I've seen nationwide where zoning in and of itself is a cure for that problem.
Well, then why do people point to zoning as being an answer to affordability?
Theoretically, as supply increases, prices go down relative to demand. We haven't seen that occurring. That assumes a rational market, and I've been making the case since 2014 that we don't have the housing market is fundamentally broken, largely due to financialization. It's not your parents' or your grandparents' housing market where you put a for sale sign out in the yard and someone who lives in the community comes and buys it. Today, you're competing against flippers, you're competing against Wall Street investors, you're competing against private equity funds, you're competing against a host of digital investors, all hoping to maximize profit by buying units.
So you're saying it's hard to imagine that in that kind of a market, even though the market may have slowed down a little bit in the last year, that in that kind of market, more density is going to result somehow in more affordability.
Correct.
On that. Yeah.
Correct.
So there is some that the Metro Planning Department is proposing. Lucy Kemp, can you talk us through these proposals in a way that will excite us all? All listeners will be rapt listening to this description. But you all have proposals to zoning that are intended to help with affordability, correct?
Yeah. So just before sort of digging into the proposals that we have on the table, I wonder if it might help to step back and level set and talk about zoning a little more generally. So when I think about our city, what is so remarkable is the diversity of places we have, from our environmentally significant hillsides and waterways to older streetcar neighborhoods to emerging places and old industrial sites, right? So there's a lot of things to love and care about as we think about managing our growth and change. So one of the single most important tools, Blake, as you mentioned in your intro, is the code. And that is local regulations that I think of as a rule book, what we can build and where. And it has enormous influence on the look, the feel, the function of our built environment. So it's really important for our code standards themselves to be a high quality. We've been working for about a year on evaluating the code. We wanted to start there because that's sort of the most basic sort of set of building blocks that we have. We've heard from a lot of residents that they want greater choice, but they also want improved outcomes in terms of design quality and overall compatibility with the neighborhood. If you've ever walked past a large new building, and felt a little bit like, wow, I wish this felt a little more comfortable, well, that's a zoning provision that we need to evaluate. So what we're proposing is that we think that we are missing and have actually constrained development of some pretty basic building types that we used to build a lot of in the 1920s and 30s. These are smaller manor houses, quadplexes, duplexes. These are things that historically we understood how to deliver. And for whatever reason, right now, we in Nashville are delivering a lot of single-family homes and a lot of large-scale multifamily homes and not much in the middle. We think doing more of the middle development and delivery is going to help us sort of on the financial side, and I can talk a little bit about why that is, but also in terms of the look and the feel of the built environment. So we've got 4 proposals right now before council that generally deal with those middle housing types. And I can talk to you about what those are if you want more specifics. Are you excited? Is that...
You know what? I was tracking with you the whole way. If you're just tuning in, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking about development policies that promote affordable housing, though often also divide our community. Lucy Kemp is Executive Director of Metro Planning. Ken Chilton, Professor at TSU, who studies zoning. With the 4 proposals, primarily you're talking about this kind of the middle point where you've got quadplexes, duplexes that you would incentivize. How would you incentivize developers to build that way?
I don't want to say that we would incentivize it. What we would do is provide it as options in the code.
You're saying there are places that it's not even allowed currently unless you get a special exemption.
Right. So right now, we make people go through a really tough process. You're going around your elbow to get to your thumb if you want to deliver small-scale projects with high design quality. So we require specific plan zoning to deliver high-quality design projects. We should be making it easier for people to deliver at a scale that Nashvillians want, not making it more onerous. So we need to remove barriers to delivering high-quality, also moderate-scale projects like quadplexes. You go into any historic neighborhood in the city, you see really great-to-scale multifamily development that feels really good. And because it's got really good design constraints. And so, yes, the first proposal that we have is to create 2 new zoning districts, RN and RL. These are options. They're not mandates. So you'd have to go through an entirely separate new legislative public process to put these districts in effect. The second one addresses some of the tall, skinny discussions. It brings the height down so that they feel a little more compatible with neighborhoods and also clarifies some weird administrative rules that we have in the city. Now, if I tell you about those, your eyes might really roll in the back of your head.
All right, then we'll hold off for just 1 second. And Ken, let me pull you in here because I'm thinking about how we started the show talking about a neighborhood near the Priest Lake area where there was the developer was like, I could either build these single family homes or I could build twice as many townhomes. We think that's going to be good for the community. And people were, pretty upset. Why do you get such passion against these things when it doesn't sound like a huge change, even as Lucy's describing it here, to have, twice as many homes rather than, the single family homes?
It's the uncertainty. I've looked at an algorithm on Zillow that says my home's worth $650,000. And change to my neighborhood might threaten that $650,000.
You're saying they see their property owner who says, I like how that feels, thinking that this house is worth so much more than it was a few years ago. You're telling me you're building something that's half as valuable as that? I don't know that that's going to be good for me.
I think that has a lot to do with it. But I would like to touch on the big issue from this whole series today. Who's going to pay for all this? I mean, it's one thing to give me the right to build an accessory unit in my backyard if I live in Green Hills. Cost of the land, maximizing profit. Does that mean I'm going to build an affordable unit because out of benevolence? Probably not. And the Barnes Fund was mentioned earlier. There was talk about a year or two ago about raising that up to $55 million, which I think would have been a step in the right direction. But we're back down to $15 million. So the city's priorities in terms of we've studied affordable housing to death. We know the issues. Are we going to fund it? We can fund a stadium and find money for that really quickly. Where's the dedication? If we really want to solve this problem, the federal government's not going to give us the money. State government's not going to give us the money. We've got to be more innovative and creative.
Lucy, we've taken up most of the hour here, but can I leave you with the last word? How do we achieve this? The purse strings are not your thing, but is it going to require more funding to really make affordable housing happen?
Well, Blake, I want to make sure I don't leave today without saying, in my mind, the most immediately impactful of the proposals we put on the table is loosening the restrictions around detached accessory dwelling units, which are like mother-in-law suites, garage apartments, those kinds of things. In our minds, and what we've heard from a lot of residents is we want more choices to allow mother-in-laws or a kid, who's graduated from school and needs to get on his feet. We want to have income from that. And so we do think that we are answering the questions that we're getting from residents that want more choices.
Well, Lucy Kempf, thank you so much for laying it out there. The Metro Planning Department is in active mode right now. Lucy Kempf, Executive Director. Ken Chilton, Professor in the Department of Public Administration at TSU. Thanks to you both. Thanks for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. If you missed yesterday's show, we interviewed Tennessee's new Deputy Governor, Stuart McWhorter, learned about his business life, his foray into politics, and what he gained from a couple of years in a tiger suit when he was the Clemson mascot. You can find that in our podcast feed or at thisisnashville.org. Today's episode was produced by Cindy Abrams. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Limley and Mary Mancini. Our board operator, Michael Pollard. Masterminds behind that theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Stephen Elliott and the Nashville Banner. Conversation doesn't end here. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear on the show by emailing thisisnashville@wpln.org. Also find us on the socials. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.
Vanderbilt's Master of Liberal Arts and Science program is designed to be ideal for working professionals and lifelong learners. MLAS offers flexible scheduling with evening classes taught by Vanderbilt's renowned faculty. Spring courses include Human Flourishing, A Life Well Lived, as well as Social Justice and Global Literacy Studies. Chart your new intellectual and career journey, now accepting applications. Details at vanderbilt.edu/MLAS.